It's like something that, again, like if we're so concerned about these things, like then why aren't those things being spoken about?
I haven't heard from you. What do you think?
Oh, I use they them pronouns, so please don't refer to me as ma'am. What do I think about ICE? Fuck them and their Gestapo ass practices.
Hey guys, my name is Saleem Juma, one part host of the YouTube channel Saleem N Dion, and today we are out here in beautiful West Seattle at the beach, no less, to ask people what they think of ICE, which is Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Now, there has been a lot of hatred towards ICE lately, from AOC calling them people who are enforcing concentration camps, and Antifa at the border literally trying to sneak refugees and migrants over the border in complete violation of U.S. law. Now, we want to find out what people think. Are they just against President Trump's policies, or is it really a super large hatred for ICE themselves, who are literally just doing their jobs? As usual, we want to be able to continue to do man on the street interviews for you guys every day. We do march videos, we do protests. I would say we are the premier conservative YouTube channel in Seattle. So if you want to support us on Patreon, support us on Venmo and Cash App, please do, because we don't have any. We don't have sponsors and things like that. We're not backed by, something like NBC, like Vox is. So make sure you support us and continue to support independent journalism. Much love, guys, and stay classy, Seattle. Hey, guys, my name is Saleem Juma with Saleem N Dion. The wordplay there, I'm sure you guys can understand it. So I'm standing here with
Mike?
Jordan.
It's a pleasure to meet you guys. So today we're talking about people's feelings about ICE.
ICE?
Nice. It's good.
You're talking about the weather, or you're talking about the agency?
There's a weather called ICE?
Yeah. Right.
No, we're talking about Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Oh, that's a
All right.
I'm not against patrol per se, but I believe what's happening is it's too much. It's you got kids that are treated incorrectly. You got the whole person. No, I'm against what they're being told to do.
Can you explain a little bit more, like clarify exactly what ICE's actions are you against?
I'm against ICE taking kids away from their families.
So that family separation bill has actually been changed. President Trump, he signed a bill to make sure that kids would no longer be separated from their families.
That's a good start.
When did that happen?
That was just what was that? Just a month ago? Yeah. So, and it's really interesting. Did you guys know that we've actually been separating kids from their families since the 80s?
So not to the extent that we're
Actually, it was done more under the Obama administration.
So, yes. So I do. I'm very familiar with the fact that the immigration issues were brought up more under previous administrations as well.
But the media bias has been pushed extremely hard.
And Trump was a huge liberal Democrat that decided to run against Hillary just for the fun, and then ended up
Became a conservative. No, I'd say he's more liberal than most conservatives dating back to the 60s.
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually couldn't have, if it's not Bernie, I couldn't have thought of a different. It shows us the issues. What I like about Trump is he shows us the mirror of the problems. Everything was more in a hush hush. Everything was all in the closet. And when he came out, his attitude. America clearly sees where they stand socially, voting in a guy like that. So no, anyway, yeah.
So the thing is, though,
your point.
So an interesting thing, though, one thing I want to give some context on is if you commit, as a father, you commit domestic violence or something like that, or you commit a DUI, they do separate you from your family. That's just a thing. I mean, that they are changing that with the immigration authorities and stuff like that. But the people that are coming across the border did objectively commit a crime, right? The politically correct term may be undocumented, but the objective term is still illegal immigrant.
Sure. Well, we were just talking about it the other day, actually. So I was an immigrant. I grew up in New York
I'm the child
City.
of immigrants. Completely understand.
I wasn't born here. I was raised in New York City from the age of 6. And my mom came here. I was smuggling a duffel bag out of the Soviet Union, the whole thing, right?
Wow.
So
That is an incredible. I would love to get the full story on that sometime.
I'm very for giving people. I'm not like, I don't necessarily want people to not come. However, if you just use simple physics, just simple physics. Here, right? You start putting in water, because you could use some water, right? After a while, water starts to go away. So you have to do something when things start spilling over the brim. I think that there are things that we can change culturally in this country before we close the doors on people that can come in and actually help.
Well, I don't think there's anyone's talking about closing the doors. I think, well, okay, no, that's not true. There are certainly people on the far right spectrum who are talking about completely closing off immigration. I want to state,
putting a wall, all the stuff that
well,
Trump was talking
hold on,
about,
let's talk about the wall for a second.
Sure.
So the wall, I mean, if you don't know this, Israel actually put up a wall,
I'm
and
very
it
familiar
stopped
with the wall.
90% of their illegal immigration, or was it 95?
So
and Hungary put up a wall, and it stopped
Right.
100% of their illegal immigration. So walls do work.
But that's not the point I'm trying to make. Walls they do work. My point is putting up a wall to stop immigration, right?
Illegal immigration, though.
Well,
There will still be ports of entry at the wall.
okay, now explain the legal process of our current immigration.
Utterly horrible. We need immigration
There you go.
reform. Yeah.
Enough said.
But you
Right,
still
so
can't
it's
come
an
here
argument
illegally,
that
though.
Do I?
People still can't come here illegally.
No, they can't come here illegally, but there are so many other ways to. Well, it's a screwed up system.
Well,
You
absolutely.
can't come here illegally, but then we make it very difficult for you to come here legally. So then, what's the point? How are you going to come here to contribute to the society while America has so many lazy people?
So if
many
the system
lazy
is wrong, I can objectively break it because it's wrong.
No, we could rebuild it. Let's rebuild it.
Sure. No, I'm not disagreeing with you,
But
but you
people
still can't
think-
commit the crime in the first place, right?
Up coming here illegally?
Yeah. It's still
Well,
wrong.
what's coming here illegally?
Crossing the border without being sponsored, getting a green card, and coming
How
here
do you get
legally.
sponsored to come here?
Well, you have to go through the actual immigration process, right? You're
do you-
screwing over legal
Right,
immigrants.
but what's the process?
Well, I don't know it. I mean, I didn't immigrate to this country. I was born here,
Yeah.
right?
Right. So I wasn't, and it was like a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
It took for us to live in hostels, in Europe, and we did. We made it here. But
Were you able to do an asylum claim, especially coming as a refugee from the Soviet Union?
We went from the Soviet Union to Italy, stayed there for a little bit, and Austria kind of went around Europe until finally the numbers, came up.
And that's good. We should try to take in refugees and asylum seekers when we can, but can you tell me why so many people have been said to be given asylum in places like Mexico, coming from Guatemala and Honduras, but they choose not to stay in Mexico?
But they choose not to stay in Mexico?
When Mexico said they would give them asylum.
We can guess. I mean, it's probably not an easy country to live in.
But what I'm trying to say is many people are coming here for economic viability rather than actually because their life is in danger.
I'm not denying that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that's still cheating the system. I mean, you're still breaking the law by coming here illegally.
But what if, if somebody comes here for economic,
Viability.
viability, then why not make them pay taxes?
Well, we do make them pay taxes.
So what's wrong with that?
But they're still illegal. You still objectively broke the law when you came here
We have a
illegally.
different opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
we-
And that's
we-
the beautiful thing.
yeah.
We can disagree.
We have
That's why we do this.
And we do. I'm actually
Yeah.
all for,
Yeah.
because we are here
Yeah.
with our resources,
Yeah.
thanks to the way we run our country, corporate and all the other. Because of our resources and where we are at on the level and the population, I honestly would not mind taking the people who are born here, who cheat the system just as much, if not more, and substituting them with people who weren't born here.
Oh my God, I've said that so many times.
exchange
So it's
program.
actually not, it's definitely not a conservative belief, but I would trade so many of the woke leftist college students that are running around and breaking things and Antifa groups around the city and things like that.
And it's
I
like-
would trade them for illegal immigrants.
Just as much as I would change the far right who sit
You
there.
mean the white supremacists? Oh, definitely.
Not
We'll
just
send them
white
back there
supremacists,
too.
Not just the white supremacists. Those who sit there and have big signs that says "Get your government hands off of my Medicare." Them, I would trade them.
I mean, that's certainly a difference of opinion. I believe in less government.
What you're talking
Yeah.
about, then don't talk, because you sit there and say, "Get your government hands off of my Medicare." Well, It's the government hands that gave it to you.
That's true.
Right? So people are sheep.
Yeah.
I would be happy to substitute the sheep for those who want to actually come in here and contribute.
I think that's actually something we can agree on.
And
I mean, we may disagree on
nothing
who
to do
gets
with-
out of the country,
Well,
but
if you were to save all the right, I don't care if it's liberals.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's conservatives.
yeah, as long as they're objectively lazy people who would be replaced.
It doesn't matter.
No.
Yeah, if you don't want education, you want to sit on government cheese. I don't care what you are.
Yeah.
You know, it don't matter, right? So anyway, that's our. You know, again, I grew up with everybody and anybody in my life on both sides of the aisle, ethnically, politically, and I'm pretty confident what I say.
Well, no, I think you have great points. We may disagree on some things, but we also had a great discussion about things, and I think I hope you saw some of where I was coming from, and I think I saw where you were coming from.
I disagree with you less than you think.
Yeah. No, I see that. We clearly agree on certain points.
Yeah.
But my last point is, what do you think about the current political polarization that we're dealing with, and how can we fix it? I mean, if you don't know what's going on, I mean, you've probably seen the riots in the streets, the millions of dollars worth of property damage being done. I mean, there is a war going on in our streets right now. Me and Dion are actually in the thick of it, being conservatives in Seattle. If you wear that red hat in Seattle, especially in a place like Capitol Hill or Belltown, we had a sign that said "Free hugs from Trump supporters," and we got attacked three separate times. Eggs and milkshakes. Multiple people were attacking us in broad daylight. There were 50 witnesses around. Police didn't even bother showing up.
So, the police comment, you know, you get that on the other side too. I'm not worried about that. To me, is not part of your point you're making, because police won't show up when liberals are being attacked by conservatives in a conservative area as well.
The point I'm talking about is the war that's going on in the streets.
So
that's what I wanted.
Right, but
yeah.
I'm just
No, I
since you
understand,
point
yeah.
the police out,
Yeah.
you know, I would say to your point, that's been going on. It's not just now. The whole Trump thing, you know, how free hugs from Trump supporters. You know, I've always said the reason why Trump is in office right now is because you have. Just like why anybody else comes in from the opposite extreme of who just left, right? Is because you have both parts or both sides of the aisle. You have the extremes that are far more opinionated than they are well researched, and
But they're very loud extremes.
well, sure, that's where you're heavy opinionated, right? And on both sides.
The moderates are unfortunately much quieter or drowned out by the extremes.
Right. Again, both sides. Right. So whether you have the religious right, whether you have the gun issue, whether you have the abortion issue, these have been very polarizing, you know, things. And then of course now you have the you've always had the racial issue, but now it's more out in the open, right? So like I would say presidents are always puppets. They're not leaders. This is America fails to understand this. They don't elect leaders. They elect puppets that suit the better cause of whatever corporate interest at the time that there is.
Yeah.
So
Well, I definitely want corporate interference out of our politics. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, absolutely. On both sides, and yeah. So it's those, whether it's liberals or whoever blames these issues on the other party, those are the sheep. Those are the ones that are not well researched enough to know that the party separation is created by the phenomenon of let's keep the people occupied with arguing instead of where the real issues lie.
Uniting the two sides into fixing the country and the world.
That requires research. That requires less shiny rocks with Apple updates and all these other things that take our youth, right? And unfortunately, I hate to be pessimist here. We could agree on what is required. I'm not so sure I have an optimistic approach on, given where our culture has gone, I'm not so sure the outcome is that great.
So guys, my name is Saleem Juma with the YouTube channel Saleem N Dion. I'm standing here with
Lalo?
Dre.
Those are pretty dope names. Lalo and Dre? That's pretty dope, man. All right, so today we're talking about ICE.
So what about ICE? Like, what do we know, or like
What are your opinions on ICE? So Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Not like ice baby. Like,
No, yeah, I don't know. Like my opinion is like we should have protection at the border, but then when you hear about like ICE officials in other states, then that is kind of concerning, because to me I'm like, okay, cool, if you want to protect the border, then do that, you know, but then why do we have other people that are nowhere near the border enacting and holding people. Also, it's really controversial because then sometimes you hear that they're not even a part of like the state or the city, and they're private contractors. So then that too is also concerning because then it's more like what are the
regulations referring to that?
And,
No, I can understand that. I actually didn't know that there are actual private contractors working for ICE.
Yeah, there's private contractors, and also it's like what are like who, if you're not beholden to the state or the city,
that's a problem.
Or then
there's no
then
oversight.
Who are you? Yeah, then who are you? Right.
No.
So then, yeah, it's just really murky, and it's really all of these gray areas that come with them. And what I hear from them, it's always someone that's like a family or someone that's being detained, and the reason why it's a controversy is because those people really didn't merit anything to be detained by them, and yet they're being detained. Or sometimes people are going to court, and before they get to court, that's when they're apprehended.
Okay. Yeah. So are these people actually objectively illegal immigrants, or are they just U.S. citizens that are being stereotyped?
Well, it happens in any case. Like I know in Arizona, there was laws that were passed where you could be asked for your documentation, and then there was anecdotal stories of just people saying like, well, I don't have to worry about it, like, or
somebody may be white and they don't have to,
or people who just had no concern of that passing, or why would they think about that. And then on the other hand, people who are documented and who have lived there through many generations, they have to worry about it, and they have to like carry their papers everywhere they go because
they look Latino, and people are stereotyping them. So is the concern more that people are being stereotyped? Because I mean, if you objectively broke the law by coming here illegally, it is something that you may have to worry about. I mean, ICE, enforcement. And it seems to me that there's a large population of the American public that either hate ICE or actively try to stop them from doing their jobs.
What is their job?
Well, it's immigration and customs enforcement, so it's dealing with people who are illegal, it's deporting people who are illegal, people who have broken the law, it's dealing with customs enforcement at the border.
So for me, the way I view it is a lot of people are coming here in order to perceive like financial resources.
Sure.
And that's
economic viability.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that these people, once they're arrested, many of them are held in detention centers and they're forced to work. So if ICE is doing their job and they're detaining illegal immigrants...
What do you mean, you're slave labor?
Yeah, they're forced to work by private corporations. It also happens in like the private prison industrial complex. Like,
I know about that, yeah.
So it also happens with ICE and these detention centers. Yeah. So if we're so concerned about people coming into the country and pushing other people from jobs, then why, when we detain these people and we arrest these people, are we having them work?
See, I don't know anything about that, but I'm definitely going to have to look into anybody that's being forced into slave labor, because I'm pretty sure the 14th Amendment says that no man shall ever be...
But it also says that under the Constitution, we're also supposed to have like a trial, and these people aren't, many people, even children, aren't given a trial. They're just deported or sent to a detention center. So there's many supposed rights and supposed laws and the Constitution, all of these things that aren't being abided by. And like I said, like sometimes ICE is contracted by, or they're beholden to a private corporation. So it's like I said, what is ICE? What is their
So the problems with ICE is not that their responsibilities are dealing with illegal immigrants or customs enforcement and border protection. It's that there are a lot of problems inside the ICE agency itself, like the private contracting and things like that.
Everything in general is a problem, because the whole like the biggest viewpoint that I get from people coming into the country illegally is protecting jobs. But then there's also
Well, it's not just that. Each nation has its both its right and its responsibility to protect its sovereign borders. That's very, very important. And if you
that's
cross the
true.
border in any other country, I mean, you
Yeah.
do that in Mexico, you do that in Guatemala, you do that in China, Syria, Saudi Arabia. Many of those countries will shoot you if you try to cross their borders.
And if you bring that point up, I would agree with you, but then I would say, why isn't there a concern on the northern border, where that's where in 9/11 attacks, and that's where they came from?
Sure.
And so if
Statistically, 52% of our illegal immigrants come from the southern border, and you're right. The other 48% that overstay their visa,
Right.
that's a huge concern too. And we need to take that down too.
Safety, right?
Well, it's
Wasn't
partly
it?
safety, but it's also the
And
fact that people are
protecting your sovereign
people are objectively breaking the law by coming here illegally.
Like what we've experienced in the past decade, the biggest catastrophe from another country was 9/11, and it came through the northern border, and no one talks about that. And
Well, they should.
We have no concern or protection over the northern border. So if
But
our
I think
biggest
statistically,
threat-
there's not so many people coming over. I mean, that's certainly an issue, right? We do have,
I think it's
border
a big
enforcement up
issue
there.
when there's a terrorist attack.
Absolutely
and
it
comes
is.
from the northern border, and no one talks of there. I haven't heard of a terrorist attack coming from the southern border. I have heard of it coming, but there's no concern over the northern border.
Well, there is. I do want you to know there is still border protection up there. It's not just open. You can't just cross the Canadian-American border.
You can though, like.
Well, I mean, you can't do it without going through customs and immigration.
But there's just like in the southern border, how there's terrain and there's areas that aren't protected by a physical barrier.
Mm-hmm.
There is ATVs and there are cameras and so forth. What I'm saying is that the southern border is more heavily funded and it is a lot more
But the majority of
protected.
our illegal immigration crisis comes from the southern border, though. That's
But
why.
that's a statistic that we can actually, it's easier to portray, because when we have these families that come here, the immigration that happens is that once you get here, these families can't come back and forth. So they have to stay. And the immigration that happens through the northern border is that these people come through visas and they overstay their visas.
Mm-hmm.
But since the northern border is a lot easier to come back and forth, and you're also the native languages in Canada are French and English, so you're already an English speaker, so it's a lot easier for you to like
Sneak over the border.
right. And it's like something that, again, like if we're so concerned about these things, like then why aren't those things being spoken about?
So, ma'am, I haven't heard from you. What do you think?
Oh, I use they them pronouns, so please don't refer to me as ma'am. What do I think about ICE? Fuck them and their Gestapo ass practices. No.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, they were on like the E-line last week checking people's IDs for no reason.
Just random people.
Just random checks, random people. I mean, like, who do you think they were
But we're a
checking?
sanctuary city, so the city,
That doesn't
Well,
mean
like,
that ICE isn't active.
they don't
like,
protect.
regardless of, like I said, like people always like bring up or quote like we're a sanctuary city or under the law or under this or under that. Like it is illegal practices that they are practiced on people who don't know their rights, or
Right.
even they assume that they don't have any rights.
And like even like ICE overall trash, but even like within like their like the legality of what they can do, like they don't stay within the boundaries of that very often. Most of the practices that they do are constitutionally illegal, like you were saying, but also constitutional rights don't necessarily apply to people who are not citizens.
Also, like, I hear a lot of people saying, like, oh, it's the law, the law, the law. Like, people always refer to the law as to, like, what's right and wrong.
But who the fuck
Like,
makes the law?
no, yeah, well, that, but also, like, slavery was the law, you know?
Jim Crow is a law.
There's a lot of things that
Those
just
things were wrong.
because it's the law, that doesn't mean that it's humane, or that doesn't mean that it's right. Or even if it is the law, that doesn't mean that people who are protecting the law are abiding by it, you know?
Sure.
And like the practices of like just calling them like a Gestapo, and like in Germany you were forced to wear a Jewish star to identify yourself, and now people are being forced to identify themselves
As
without
non-resident on their IDs.
yeah, so in your ID, just on your ID, like on paper, like you know, these practices, they're not new. And when people point them out, like, people are offended by these things, and they like, I heard a quote saying that like, racism is so American that when you protest it, it's anti-American. And that's true. Like, whenever
I don't think that's the case at all. I mean, the civil rights movement was completely American.
But like the thing is, like, if you start with the inception of our country, it's based off of, people always slavery. That's not where it started. It started based on a genocide on Native Americans, and then it started off of like stealing people from their land and then forcing them to stay here. And then there's this idea of two Americas, where it's the idea of like the melting pot, and there's white America. And this white America that we speak of, it's their America. You know, I hear African Americans who have been here since generations, who have been told go back home. So it's this America, this idea of the law and what it represents and who it represents, like what it represents to a person, isn't equal to everyone.